So this is Frederick Douglass. You've probably seen his picture. And this is one of his very famous quotes: without a struggle, there can be no progress. And this is really his motto um, throughout the book, and I think probably throughout his life. Um, so the big questions for this unit is: what is a human right? How will strong skills in reading, writing, and speaking make your life better? And how does literature affect social justice, social reconciliation, and social transformation? Um, and I've said this before, all social justice issues, all revolutions start with the writer, the person who gets others to believe that they are right, that convinces someone, that persuades. And Douglass was a big part of the social transformation of the United States in ending slavery. Um, so he's one of many previously enslaved individuals who wrote slave narratives. There was about 150 of them published between the 1700s and the early 1900s for people who were previously enslaved. And they talk about they go into three different categories. So it's tales of religious redemption, tales to inspire the abolitionist struggle, and tales of progress. And Douglass really falls into the second and the third um, category. He doesn't really talk that much about religious redemption, but he does use religion as a tool to convince other people that what he believes is correct. So where it says tales to inspire the abolitionist struggle, abolitionists were people who wanted to end slavery now, right this second. Um, and he wanted to inspire those people who were down, who really didn't feel like they were doing enough. But also tales of how he went from enslaved to this great orator, this great speaker, this great man who many people looked up to. So, conventions of the slave narrative that we will see throughout most slave narratives, and you saw a lot of this in just the really tiny section of Harriet Jacobs' story that we read the other day. And in really no particular order, there are these 13 things that most slave narratives have. So, a section that talks about when or how they were born. And Douglass starts his like this. Their parentage, who is their mother, who is their father, who were their grandparents, discovery of their slave status. So just like when children are born, we don't know if we are boys or girls or black or white or Asian or Latino or rich or poor. We find that out later. And slaves didn't know they were slaves. There was usually an event that showed them. I am not like other people. I am not like a person. How they developed literacy, and again, this is important for the slave narrative. Obviously, anyone who wrote a slave narrative had to learn how to write. So how they figured out how to write, how they figured out how to read is going to be a part of this Conventions of Slave Narrative. And again, because it goes back to this idea of literacy, reading, and writing can help set us free. A detailed description of abuse, a major conflict, a plotted escape, a marriage or a relationship that changed them, an epilogue or an ending, a picture, usually on the cover. And this picture usually is of the author themselves because, these are like, look at who I am. I am a person. This is what I look like. This is what I went through. An encounter with Christianity or becoming a believer. Again, the audience for this is going to be Americans, the majority of whom were Christians at this time. So the idea of making that connection, I am a Christian, you are a Christian. Our God says that we are all created equal and we should all treat each other the way that we would want to be treated. An appendix, which is the afterwards, a glossary or an index, and then a letter of credibility, again, to lend ethos. So usually this was someone who was a big deal in the abolitionist community. It was usually someone who was white, specifically in the beginning. But later on, like Frederick Douglass wrote letters of credibility in other people's slaves' narrative because he became that important and that well known that by him writing in these slave narratives, that led credibility to other narratives later on. So what we're looking for, we're going to look at themes, motifs, and rhetorical devices. So the major themes or underlying messages that we're looking at is slavery as an injustice. It is unfair. It is not right. There is no justice in this. Dehumanization created by using ignorance and deception is the foundation of slavery. So if we can make these people not human, if we can pretend like they aren't like you and me, then slavery is fine. So by revealing this truth, by revealing that the foundation of slavery is for you all to pretend like we aren't human, by creating this this lie around who we are as people, then slavery can exist. So to then humanize the enslaved kind of breaks down that system of slavery. And that leads in, like, slavery is unnatural. It is not right. It is not human. And it's also inconsistent. It doesn't make sense. There's no rhyme or reason behind it's not a system that works. The institution of slavery systematically destroys family bonds. Identity and selfhood are important to the characteristics of an individual. So to get to know who you are, to know who your family is, to know what you like, to know what you dislike, those are all a part of your identity. And if we take those things away, then it's taking away your identity. Another is knowledge and literacy are the keys to freedom. The written and spoken word are powerful tools of change, and friendship and community are vital in creating a sense of self. So again, these are the themes that we're going to look for. And as you read chapter 1, you're going to look for these themes and find quotes that go with the themes. Different motifs. Motifs are reoccurring incidents, images, ideas, or subjects within a work. So something that keeps happening. So the brutal and inconsistent punishment practices, the moral depravity among slaveholders. So morals is knowing right and wrong. Depravity is like worse than bad. It's beyond that. It's inconceivable how awful it is. Slave traders and owners as predators, thieves and pirates, slaves as livestock, the myths and misconceptions about slavery, the physical and sexual abuse of female slaves, city life versus rural life, the testing of one's faith, and biblical references and allusions. So you should be able to see all of these throughout basically every chapter that we read. You'll probably notice like 5 or 6 of these in each chapter. And these chapters are only 2 pages long. So he really goes through all of this repeatedly. And then finally, the rhetorical devices that we're going to look at. His appeals to pathos. A lot of the imagery that he uses appeals to that. Appeals to ethos, this idea of credibility, this idea of ethics, morally right, morally wrong, your duty and your responsibility as humans, as Christians. And then appeals to logos, so the logic, the facts, the reasoning. That's my dog. Charged diction. So that's going to be the use of per words. Per words, snarl words, things like that. Metaphor, comparisons without using like or as. Rhetorical questions, questions that are asked, but the answer is obvious, so we don't need one. Euphemisms. Euphemisms are phrases that we use to kind of make people feel better about what's happening. So when someone dies, when we try to break that news to someone, we don't just say John died, right? We say he passed away, or he's in a better place, or he went to heaven. So these are euphemisms. Anytime we take something that's hard to say and we make it easier by changing the words. Allusions are, again, alluding to or referencing something, usually biblical allusions. So if I say, like, I just got bit by a mosquito, I'm like, oh, Noah and his ark. So that's a reference to Noah taking from the Bible, Noah taking two animals and putting them on the ark, and that's how the animal kingdom was survived. In chapter 1, there is an allusion to the curse of Ham, and which basically was Christians' way of kind of justifying slavery, saying that the Bible said it was okay, even though it doesn't. So there's a newspaper article attached if you want to read that as well. On the link on the first page, there's a link to an article about it. Like I said, the imagery, anecdotes are little stories that emphasize a point that you're trying to make. I use euphemisms every day in class. They're those little stories that I tell. Just, I have a point, and then I give you an example with a story. That's an anecdote. Imagery, anything where you can picture the thing in your mind, you can visualize it. A paradox is seemingly contradictory ideas. When we read Upon the Burning of Our House, the paradox and the last line of that was, and when we shall live no more, we shall live forever. So those seems like they're opposite ideas. When we live no more, we live no more versus living forever. Like, those are opposites. But what she was talking about was when we die on earth, we will live forever in heaven. So that's a paradox. Personification is giving human qualities to inanimate objects. And then the rule of three, you've probably not heard rule of three, but you've definitely seen this. Humans love patterns. So the rule of three is, if you say, Miss Smith is smart and pretty, great. But the rule of three says you should really say Miss Smith is smart, pretty, and fun. So it's this idea of having three things in a row, and that gives us the pattern. So we're going to look at all of these, and today you are going to read chapter 1, and then find 2 quotes that have to do with one of the themes or motifs. And you're going to put that in the discussion. And for the Flipgrid, if you want to post kind of your favorite line on there, I will give you extra credit points. I'm going to read the chapter. I'm going to pause and do all of that. If you want to read, or if you want to listen to me do that. Otherwise, you can read it on your own and do the questions for today. Tomorrow is the pandemic journal. It should be half a page, double spaced. Use Grammarly. This is still schoolwork. A couple people have handed it in and you're cursing and you're not capitalizing the way that you should. Just remember, you can do this. It takes a little more effort, but it's worth it. Do things well. All right. Love you.